What if the I that's having the experience is just experience itself wearing a mask? While Rupert Spira and Almaas speak eloquently of awareness, what they're pointing to belongs to a lineage far deeper and broader, reaching from Advaita's screen and image metaphor to the diamond approach's individuated essence. Today, we're not here to dissect their dialogue, but to stand on its edge and peer further. This paradox, where awareness both reveals and conceals itself, mirrors Kierkegaard's leap into the absurd and quantum physics collapse of subject and object. We'll follow that thread into what some call Ayashanti-style awakening, where there is no observer, only the observing.
Well, thank you, Hamid, and thank you, Rupert, for taking on the invitation again to continue the conversation. It felt very short last year, 1 hour, and it became very intriguing. So we were left with an intrigue, and we wanted to continue. And thank you for being here today. We will maybe do an hour, hour and a half of conversation, and then we can take questions from you. So maybe we'll have an hour of dialogue with you as well. So that will be the structure for today. So the topic that emerged for this conversation is exploring the nature and dynamic of experience. You both talk about nature of experience and guide the audience in that exploration. Can we begin with exploring what do you mean, what each one of you mean by nature of experience? Maybe Hamid, you can begin.
I think, first of all, we can say something about what we mean by experience. And so I usually, when I say experience, I mean there is something occurring and there is an awareness with something occurring. It's like there's a consciousness of an occurrence of sorts, regardless whether the occurrence is a particular or not. So experience inherently means there is awareness or consciousness. You know, when there's no awareness and consciousness, like in deep sleep, you don't, I wouldn't call that experience unless somebody is aware of their deep sleep. Then that will be experience. So, an important question has been for me, and I think for many people, is what is experience? What is this? I mean, what's its stuff? Is experience simply there is an observer observing a certain event the way that most people think? Or, because that's one way of understanding nature of experience, like there is a subject, an observer, perceiving certain event or occurrences, and you could say, well, that's the experience. That's the nature of experience. I think here we're interested in exploring something a little more deep than that, more basic. Which is from the perspective of realization, spiritual realization. How do we see experience? And if we see experience, what is its nature? And there are many ways, I will say, that one can say it, and that bring out different facets of it, different angles on it. But basically, experience is reality manifesting itself. That's one way I see it, is that what we call experience, somebody having an experience, is reality, which is everything, and a lot more than we know of everything, expressing itself, manifesting itself in a certain way. And we, human beings, call that experience. So I think that might be good for a beginning. We can elaborate a lot more on that. You know, have Rupert say something, and then we can discussion.
The way I usually use the word experience is just the conventional way.
Yeah.
Each of us is now having an experience, or a set of experiences, and that consists of the mind, the body, and the world. The mind, thoughts, images, ideas, memories, hopes, fears, etc. The body, feelings and sensations, and the world we know through perception, sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells. So that's the conventional use of the word experience, and I would use it in that way. We normally, the popular view of experience is that experience is basically divided into two parts. There's the experience on the inside, which are thoughts and feelings, and experience on the outside, which is the world. Thoughts and feelings inside the body is what I am, and the world is everything else. So experience is normally divided into these two essential ingredients: the inside self, made out of thoughts and feelings, the outside world, made out of matter. And the first step, and I'll just only go as far as the first step, because your question was about the nature of experience. If we accept, at least as a working model, this definition of the term experience, thoughts, sensations, and perceptions, conventionally we think experience is made out of mind and matter. Mind is what's on the inside, matter is what's on the outside. So the first step we take to discover the nature of experience is to question, what is our experience really made of? Is experience really divided into these two essential ingredients? Personal mind on the inside, impersonal matter on the outside. And this question initiates an investigation, which, and the first thing we notice in this investigation, as Hamid says, is that all our experience is known. We are aware of thoughts, sensations, and perceptions. What is it that is aware of my experience? What is it that knows a thought when it appears? What is it that is aware of a toothache or the taste of tea? What is it that sees the perception of this room or hears the fan? So this is the first step the investigation into the nature of experience takes. What is it that is aware of all of this? What is it that knows our experience?
So is experience dependent on I? Is it dependent on experiencer? And is it dependent on body-mind?
We have to we have to first, when you say is experience dependent on I, we have to first ask the question, what do we mean by I? And then we can discuss whether experience is dependent on it or not.
So what do you mean when you use the word I or the pointer I? What is it for you?
Each of us has been referring to ourselves as I all our lives. When we were 5-year-old girls and boys, we called ourselves I. When we were 10, 20, 30, 40, etc., we always refer to ourselves as I. So, whatever I is, it has obviously remained present throughout our lives. Not only that, in the waking state we say, I am seeing this room. We say, I had a dream last night. And we say, I slept well. So not only does I refer to that which has remained present throughout our lives, it also refers to that which remains present throughout the 3 states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. So whatever it is, whatever I is, must satisfy these conditions. It must remain present throughout our lives and throughout the 3 states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. Now, what is it in our experience that would qualify as I on those terms? Only consciousness or awareness, and I use the terms synonymously. Not everyone does. Hamid may not, but I use them synonymously.
So awareness and consciousness
I mean pure awareness. When I say pure awareness, I mean awareness unmixed with any of the objects that it knows. It's like the screen before the movie begins. Pure, unmixed, unentangled awareness. The only stuff that is present in awareness is awareness. That is what I would call I. And the reason for calling it I is because it is only this awareness that remains consistently present throughout our lives. And therefore it is the only thing that qualifies for the name I.
I mean, I like your perspective, Rupert, and I see it's looking at I in an ultimate way. But I think most people, when they say I, in their mind, they mean different things. At the beginning, most people, when they say I, they mean their body, or the I mean the individual self. That doesn't mean that is the real I, but that is when you ask a person, what do you mean by I? They say, it's me. And spiritual practice is frequently a matter of to see through that sense of I. Is that really you? And so we need to first recognize that when most people say I, they have something in mind. Rupert says that, the real I is the pure awareness, which I agree with, but I don't think that's what most people mean by I. Even though the I that's speaking is pure awareness, there is a misidentification, at least you could say. The person thinks of their body-mind as the I, or their sense of historical individuality as I. And I can experience pure awareness as I know that experience, I know it intimately. And I think I'm not partial myself to the view of referring to pure awareness always as I. Although I have the experience, I know what's it like, And I appreciate the people who adhere to it. I see the logic and the meaning of it. In some sense, it's true. I mean, it makes sense. But I, for many people, is not a symbol that refers to something. I can be a felt experience. You have a feeling of identity when you say I. There is an affect of I-ness. Pure awareness doesn't always have the affect of I-ness. So I need to differentiate between the affect, the feeling of I, and what metaphysically or fundamentally we mean I. The feeling of I-ness is part of the ego self. The individual self, and there's the development of the ego, develops a sense of being a separate individual, but with an identification. In the sense, I know who I am. I is not you. I is not this person. Is an identification affect that one is familiar with, grows up with, and feels almost, tastes almost like your baby blanket in some sense. You know, it's familiar, it's known. You might not, you know, in the work I work with people. We spend a lot of time before a person recognizes, isolate this affect of I, and they recognize their attachment to it, because they think that is who they are, what they truly are. And that is a big difficulty of letting go of the individual self, because it feels, this is I. If that goes, I'm dead. And it takes a while first to recognize the feeling and affect of I-ness, sense of identity, as an identifying sense of who and what I am. And I also see from experience that sense of I-ness that the ego self has is a pale reflection of another sense, affect of I-ness that comes from a deeper level. In the sense, when we go to a pure awareness of consciousness, pure consciousness can manifest itself, a pure sense of I-ness, a pure sense of this is what I am. There is a recognition of this is what I am, and it feels like an I, like it is what I am. It is what truly the I is. And there is a distinct feeling of a unique sense of identity. And you could see that the ego sense feeling of I-ness was a reflection, almost a shadow, of this more luminous and I-ness that is not related to history and events and characteristic, but pure sense of a self-recognition right now. But this self-recognition right now is a way that I recognize pure consciousness can manifest, can express itself, but it is not what most tradition mean by pure awareness as the underlying ground of reality. It is a way pure awareness reveals that it is I. But pure awareness may present itself without revealing the sense of I. And then pure awareness is just pure awareness. There's no I when I'm experiencing myself as pure awareness, and there is no affect of I. There's no me. There's no one here. No one, individual or formless. No body, no thing, no ground. That is called I, although there is an awareness of everything. Now, for me, that doesn't negate that awareness can be I. I think awareness, pure awareness, we can experience it as an I-ness, as what we are directly, even a direct self-recognition of an affect of identity and I-ness, it is distinctly, clearly, precisely what I am, or could be it's not manifesting that particular quality, and it is just pure awareness. Now, you can say I then, but that is a reflection on the fact, on pure awareness, because that is what is here, that is what is aware, that is what's expressing itself. And we can say, well, that's I, but it does not necessarily feel like an I. So I'm just making a distinction between the affect of a feeling of I-ness or identity and using the word I to mean it is the subject, it is the awareness that is aware, you see. And I don't think there's a conflict between the two. It's just different ways we can experience it. So some of us might say, well, pure awareness is the true I, is the ultimate subject. And somebody says, no, true awareness is no I, is no self. The way I think about it, why fight? They're both true. There's different ways, pure awareness manifests itself. Pure awareness is much richer. And it's the teacher. It shows itself whichever way and it was needs to. So that's responded to the question of what I. So I talked about the ego I, right? Which is both reference to who it is that the subject and the affective I-ness, which is a center of the individual. It's actually an organizing center for the individual self. And that in the spiritual practice has to die at some point. There's a process of death. And there is terror to let go of that for most people, actually, because it's terrifying to lose the sense, because the person believes that is what if that goes, I'll be gone. And then there is the recognition of a different sense of I that is more fundamental, more basic than history and then phenomena that teaches us about who we are. And then that takes us back to being, the being of awareness as I. And then I realized that this being of awareness can manifest itself as I, or can manifest itself as no I. It's just pure awareness.
So it seems like we have a ground, we have an understanding. I always love to bring the metaphor, Rupert, and I think Hamid you use as well, of the screen in the movie. So from what I'm hearing, we're referring to the finite self, you call the ego mind or the individual self, as the character in the movie, and the screen is the consciousness. And then I would like to see, can we step back and maybe say awareness is that in which both the movie, the character, and the screen are appearing, is the space that gives rise to all of them.
Let me clarify the way I use the metaphor. It's not the only way to use the metaphor, but the way that I use the metaphor of the screen and the image is that the screen, first of all, it's a self-aware screen. It's not like a regular TV that is being watched by someone sitting on their sofa. The screen is aware. When there's no movie playing, it's just aware of itself. When the movie is playing, it is aware of the movie. It is watching the movie. So the screen stands for that which is aware. Now, if we go to our experience, whatever it is that is aware of our experience, that I refer to as I, the screen in the movie, can we go further back in our experience? Try now, everybody, in their experience. You can take a thought or a perception, and you can see quite clearly, I am that which is aware of the thought and the perception. Now, can you go further back in your experience than awareness? No. So, in my use of the metaphor, there is nothing further back than the screen. There isn't another kind of awareness in which the aware screen and its image appears. Why not? Simply because it's not our experience. If you go to your experience now, you are aware of your current experience. Thoughts, sounds, sights. Yeah, that there is something. Let's call it I. I am aware of thoughts and perceptions. Yes? Is that a reasonable description of your experience now?
Yes.
Now, try to go further back than the experience I am aware.
At this very moment is not there. But
In any moment, can you go further back than the experience of being aware?
I have had experiences in which there is no I, as in terms of body, mind, or separate self.
That's fine, but so we're not using... There can be the disappearance of the body and the mind, but the question is something else. Can you go further back in your experience than the experience of being aware?
There is a place where even the experience of being aware has no meaning, like has no substance, or has, in words it makes sense, but the essence of my experience, I can't describe it as awareness being aware of itself.
You see, if we can go further back in our experience than the experience of being aware, then the experience of being aware itself must be some kind of an object. If we can stand back from it and go further back, then this experience of awareness, the experience I am, or I am aware, must itself be an object. It must be temporary. It must appear in time and space. It must come and go. But it doesn't in our experience. It's precisely what defines the experience of being aware, is that it is ever present. It doesn't appear and disappear. It doesn't appear in time and space. It's not an object.
Yeah, it's more of a presence, like not even awareness, it's presence.
Yes, aware being or aware presence.
But there
I was
is
just
a
trying to
sense
answer
of-
your
yes.
question specifically. Is there something, if we take the metaphor of the screen and the image, consciousness and the object, is there another kind of awareness in which the screen and the image appears?
No.
No. That's my answer too.
I don't know if I got that. Is there an awareness beyond what? Beyond the subject and the object?
Zaya's question was taking the metaphor of the screen and the image.
Yeah.
The screen is that which is aware, the image is that we are aware of. And she asked the question, is there another kind of container in which both the screen and the image appears? Is there another kind of awareness behind what we each commonly know as the experience of being aware?
Yeah. I mean, I have that experience sometimes. Sometimes I call it the experience of the witness, which is, there is a vastness that is witnessing everything, witnessing the world and all that's happening in it, all the events in it, witnessing it in time and space, and not involved in it at all. And actually seeing my individual life in it, the movement in it, the thread of experiences, subject and object, or one realizing their awareness. But this vastness is immovable and simply witnesses.
But in Zaya's metaphor of the screen and the image, the witness that you're referring to is the screen. Her question is there another kind of awareness that is bigger than the witnessing presence of a consciousness, in which the witness and its objects appear?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is what you call the screen. It's more like the awareness that I'm aware of the screen. The screen is the manifest world. That's how I see screen. All what is manifesting. In other words, I mean, there are different ways we can sort of discuss it. I think we sort of have similar way of maybe we're looking at it from a different angle. And it is not, for me, is my primary experience. It's more like when sometime I have that experience, which is the whole time and space and experience and awareness of it and all of that is happening in a vastness that has nothing to do with any of it. And it's completely uninvolved, completely, it's like not all of my life, the whole universe, everything is happening within. But I don't want to, deviate much into that, but that's just a particular experience.
I'm actually curious about that. I'm like, can there be an experience without an experiencer? Do we need an experiencer in order to have experience?
Good question. Is there an experience without an experiencer? Well, maybe you want to say something about that. 'Cause I'm still formulating my response.
Can there be an experience without awareness? No. What kind of an experience would an experience in the absence of awareness be?
Yeah, is there such a thing?
It's like, could there be an image without a screen?
Yeah.
No.
Good.
It's not possible. Can there be a screen without an image? Sure. Can there be awareness without an awareness of something? Yes. However, in order to have the experience of let's go one step back. Prior to experience, that is prior to the experience of the mind, body and world, awareness just knows its own being. It is the knowing of its own being. It knows and is itself alone. And it is infinite because there is nothing else in it apart from itself.
So that's a good question to ask. How does it know itself?
Let me just finish answering the I mean, that would be a good question. But I'm trying to answer
I agree, yes.
Zaya's question about whether there needs to be an experiencer to have an experience. So prior to the appearance of an object, awareness knows and is its own infinite self alone. Now, in order to experience something other than itself, awareness needs to rise in the form of the mind. It needs to cease gazing at itself, turn away from itself towards the object or experience that it knows. In other words, in order to know a finite object, consciousness must cease knowing itself as the infinite subject. Because it's not possible for something that is infinite to know something that is finite. In order to know something that is finite, such as a mind, a body, or a world, consciousness must seem to forget or overlook the knowing of its own infinite being. It must rise in the form of the finite mind, which it does by identifying itself with the body, and it is only as that apparently finite mind that it can know something called an apparently finite object. So the finite mind is a kind of collapse of pure consciousness into a finite kind of consciousness called mind or ego or the separate self. And consciousness limits itself by identifying itself or by appropriating the limitations that properly belong to the body. That is why the mind is a mixture of consciousness and the limitations that belong to the body. And this, pure consciousness is, as it were, veiled by the limitations that belong to the body. And as this apparently finite consciousness, it can know an apparently finite world. That is why when we see the world, like we're all seeing the world now, we always see it from the point of view of a body. Even when we dream at night, we dream that we are a person in the dream. The world that we see in a dream is viewed from the point of view of the person that we imagine ourselves to be. When we wake up from the dream, we realize that the mind with which we knew the dreamed experience was not located in the body of the person that we imagined ourselves to be. Just as right now the knowing with which each of us is now knowing their experience appears to be limited to and located in this body, but it isn't.
And just to clarify, when you say a collapse, in that collapse is also the vastness. It's at the same time vastness, and there is collapse only when you see it from...
Consciousness, as it were, overlooks the knowing of its own being, and as a result appears as a finite mind. It's what Wordsworth meant when he said, our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. What he meant is the waking state is but a sleep and a forgetting. It is an overlooking of the infinite nature of pure consciousness. In order to know the waking state world, consciousness has to forget its own nature and imagine that it shares the limits of the body. It is this mixture of consciousness plus the body that makes the finite mind or the ego, the separate self. And it is from the illusory point of view of that ego or separate self that a world of objects and others seems to come into existence.
So is experience a facet of awareness?
It's a modulation of awareness, just as the image is a modulation of the screen. It appears that experience is made out of stuff out there called matter, or stuff in here called mind. But actually, if we make a deep exploration of our experience, all we find is infinite consciousness. In other words, there are no real finite objects made out of matter, and no real finite selves made out of mind. There is just one indivisible, infinite consciousness, manifesting itself in all the forms of experience, and seeming, from the point of view of one of those selves, to consist of a multiplicity and diversity of objects. But that is only true from the illusory point of view of one of those separate selves. Just as from the point of view of the character in the movie, its experience seems to be made out of trees and fields and skies and rocks and clouds. But from the point of view of the one who truly knows the self-aware screen, there are no objects there. There are no people there. There is no multiplicity and diversity of objects and selves. There is just itself, just its own infinite self.
As its infinite self includes all that is perceived?
The infinite self, infinite consciousness, is all that there is. There is literally nothing other than that.
Okay.
And it takes the appearance of all that is perceived.
Yeah.
But all that is perceived only becomes a multiplicity and diversity of objects and selves from the illusory point of view of one of those selves.
Yeah.
In other words, infinite consciousness never knows a finite object or world. If it were to know something finite, it would immediately become a finite consciousness. And that is what is...
It wouldn't know a finite object, Unless it forgets its infinity.
Exactly, and therefore, in order to know an apparently finite object, it has to forget its own infinite self and become a finite subject called mind.
So to an
ego.
ordinary or conventional experience, that's why you call it the collapse.
Yeah,
Because it's
exactly.
forgetting that
Exactly.
vastness.
It's a precipitation.
That's,
The ego or the finite mind is a precipitation within infinite awareness. So it's infinite awareness seeming to assume the limitations of the body and therefore becoming what is called the finite mind. It never really becomes the finite mind, and it never really knows the finite object. It only becomes a finite mind from the illusory point of view of the finite mind.
Very good. I like what you're saying, Rupert. That's my experience too. You say it very well. And when you use the word mind, finite mind, what are you referring to? Because usually in English, like when we say mind, we mean the thinking apparatus. Obviously, you don't just mean that.
I mean, yes, mind from a conventional point of view. If we were to ask most people, not this rarefied group of truth lovers here, if we were to ask most people, what is your mind, or where is your mind? They would say, my mind is located here in my brain. It is that with which I know my experience. So mind for everybody includes this faculty to know or experience. But on top of this faculty to know, or the faculty of pure knowing, most people imagine and feel a limitation. In other words, most people believe and feel that the knowing with which they know their experience is located in this and subjected to the limits and destiny of this.
By mind, do you mean the mental thing only? Or do you include emotions and sensations?
I mean everything. Thinking, feeling, sensing, perceiving.
So all individual experience,
all,
you refer to it as mind.
Manifest experience. Mind, I could define it like this: thinking, sensing, and perceiving.
I see. Okay, so you're really referring it to all our individual conscious experience.
All, yes, exactly. All apparently objective experience.
Yeah, all apparently individual, whether subjective or objective. You call
yes.
that, you call
thinking,
that mind.
Feeling, sensing, imagining, hoping, fearing, desiring, tasting, smelling.
Yeah, okay, so you're using the word mind in a technical way that is not the usual English language. And I think it's good for us to clarify that.
Yeah.
Because when most people use the word mind, they say that's different from my heart.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
That's what most people say. Well,
Yes.
I got my mind, I got my heart, I got my
Yes.
body. So
Yes.
you're using my mind to include the heart here.
Yes.
You see? So that's good for us to understand.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes I use that concept of mind.
Yes.
I tend to go with the more ordinary sense. When I say mind, I mean the knowing, definitely.
Yes.
The knowing and the thinking and the remembering and the synthesis and the imagination. But then there's the heart, which is the feeling and the love and the responsiveness and the contact and the intimacy. And the body is more of a sensate, kind of a dynamism, but also a capacity for external action. But the totality of that, I give it a different name.
Yes. Well, I have to confess that I'm not always consistent. Sometimes I use the word mind specifically to mean thinking and imagining, as opposed to feeling, as opposed to
both ways. Okay.
And other times, for instance, in my response to your last question, I'm using the mind in a much more general sense to include all experience.
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting discussion, which I'd like to get into more. But I also don't want to forget your original question, Saya, which is there a possibility for there to be experience without a subject, without an experience? I think we shouldn't forget it. I don't mean I'm going to answer it right now, but it is.
And maybe I can.
Because that takes us pretty deep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think we share the understanding that experience appears in awareness and is made out of awareness. That's the ground. And then there is the body-mind, that experience the world and knows the world through perceptions, sensations. But I would like to talk about, there is also an experience that it's more subtle, it's not dependent on body-mind, and is not even in space and time. There are moments in which there is experience just of presence. There are no perceptions, no sensations. It's like a more subtle form of experience. Can you talk about that? And perhaps this is just another experience, maybe it's just a more subtle form.
The quick answer is no, I can't talk about that. Because it's only possible to talk about something that has objective qualities. And by definition, what you're referring to, which is a real experience, but it's a non-objective experience, there's nothing that we can talk about.
Yes.
So,
but there is a sense, there is something there. There
it's
is an
experience, yes.
Yes.
It is the experience of being aware is an undeniable experience. If I were to ask everyone now, are you aware? Everyone would pause, refer to their experience, and say with absolute certainty, yes. Now, if I were to ask you, where did you go in the pause between the question, are you aware, and your answer, yes? Do that now. Ask yourself the question, am I aware? And then go to, as it were, the experience of being aware. Where do you go? We can't say. It's an undeniable experience. Nobody can deny the experience of being aware. But nobody can find the experience of being aware. Why not? Because it's not an object.
Yeah.
It does not appear in time or space. It is not findable. It is a non-objective but undeniable experience. I'm using the word experience now in a broader context.
Robert, are you saying that pure awareness is unknowable?
On the contrary, I'm saying it knows itself.
Oh, it knows itself.
It is
it
unknowable as an object.
Oh, I see. It knows itself in its purity. It can know itself in its purity.
It is the knowing of itself. It doesn't know itself in subject-object relationship.
I understand, yeah.
But to make this, to make a metaphor of this, imagine empty space. Imagine the empty space, for instance, of this room.
Yeah.
Imagine the space before any objects appear in it. It's just empty space.
Yeah.
But now add the quality of knowing to it,
Yeah.
or consciousness. So it's an empty, conscious space.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
that knowing space knows itself just by being itself. Its nature is pure knowing. It doesn't know itself as something. It's too close to itself. It cannot turn around and look at itself and say, there I am.
So you talk about the mode of knowing here. The mode of knowing is not a subject-object knowing. It's a knowing by being.
It's pure.
It's the fact that
knowing
it is
being.
itself. It is knows itself.
Aware being.
Yeah, the knowing and the being are the same thing.
Yes, it knows its own existence. And
It knows exactly.
And that is what is unique, what is absolutely unique about the experience of being aware. It is the only experience there is that knows itself. In other words, it is the only experience that is absolutely true. That is not relative to anything else. Everything else that is known, for instance, the world, is relative to the appearance of the finite mind, and therefore it is only at best relatively true. The only absolutely true knowledge or experience there is the knowing of our own being, or its knowing of itself.
Yeah, so that is the awakening.
Yes.
That's the awakening
Yes.
for the awareness to awaken to what is it, right? What is awareness in its own? Without it, there's no awakening. That's what sounds like what you're saying.
awakening is when awareness disentangles itself from the objects of perception.
Right.
Awareness, as it were, loses itself in the objects of perception.
So when it doesn't lose itself.
When it disentangles itself, when it comes back home, and it realizes, this is what I am all by myself.
Right.
That is the recognition of one's true nature.
Yes. Yeah.
I
like that.
I have
I like
trouble
it.
with it.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. I don't
To
have
me,
trouble
when
with
I
it.
hear, when I hear awareness being aware of itself, I hear anthropomorphizing awareness.
That's
Why?
because you
Can you guide us? I would love to. Like, I don't want to take awareness being aware of itself as a sentence, as a statement.
Are you
Can you
aware
guide
now?
us into
Are
that?
you aware? Now, are you aware?
Yes.
How do you know?
Right now, I know it through the body-mind. I have.
No.
Yes.
Let me.
Remember, this is the direct path. He's not going to take detours. You're going to take him on.
Okay. Let's go back a couple of steps. Are you aware of your thoughts?
Yes.
Your thoughts flow by.
Yes.
The thought that was present when I asked you that question has already vanished. There's now another thought. But you are that which is aware of them.
Yes.
The thoughts vanish, but you, awareness, don't vanish. Yeah? Now, are you aware of your body?
Yes.
Your sensations, the tingling sensation. Rub your fingers together. Okay, a new sensation appears. Stop rubbing your fingers. It slowly dissipates. Now it's vanished. Yes? But you, the one that is aware of those sensations, remains. Now, ask yourself the question, not am I aware of my thoughts or am I aware of my sensations, but simply, am I aware? Previously, when I asked you, are you aware of your thoughts, your awareness went to the thought, checked it out and said yes. Then I asked you, are you aware of the sensation at the soles of your feet? Your awareness rises in the form of attention and it directs itself towards the sensation. Yes, I am aware. Now, where does awareness go when it hears the question, am I aware?
Here, nowhere.
It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go to the body or the mind. There you are. You didn't know, awareness doesn't know the experience of itself via the body or the mind. It knows itself by itself. It's like, what does the sun have to do to illuminate itself? Does it have to shine on the moon and then use the reflected light of the moon to light itself up? No, it illuminates itself by itself because it's made of light.
But knowing itself by itself, it's already a movement. It's already...
No, it's not. It's being. It's pure being.
Yeah.
Awareness only needs to rise or move in the form of mind or attention in order to know something other than itself. In order to know itself, it does not need to rise or move or take the form of attention. It remains knowing its own being. It stays at home.
But this thing that is other than itself, let's say a thought, the essence of it is still itself, it's still awareness.
But that's
so
true,
it's
but
not other than itself.
No, that's true, but that's a different subject. That's also true. But we're talking about the experience of awareness being aware of itself. I went to Ellen and I live in Oxford, in the UK. Sorry if I just tell
like
this story.
Yes.
Sorry,
As well.
you come back and then I'll tell it. You carry on. I'll tell it later. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
What is it for you, Hamid?
Here, listening to all of this. There are two things we've been talking about, 2 or 3 things that I'd like to go into some detail. One is what Rupert called mind, or what we see now is the complex of body, heart, and mind, and the totality of individual experience. And the other thing is what you started with. Is there experience without an experiencer? Because I think the two are connected. First thing, I think I will present my understanding of how experience happens, right? Because we could say the nature of experience is awareness, and that is my experience too, is awareness or consciousness. It doesn't completely account for what happens, because I don't use the word mind to refer to that possibly for one particular reason, which is, even though we can say there is only one awareness, one consciousness, the fact of it is that experience, any experience, regardless how entrapped and regardless how enlightened, always has a first personal givenness to it. It's always somebody's experience. So Rupert realization is Rupert realization, not my realization. Although it might be the same awareness, but there's something that is Rupert. There's something that is Zaya. And that is very important for how experience happens, because there's no perception without that. Any experience, any perception that happens, you will notice it is somebody's experience. Even though I'm not saying that somebody is the separate individual self, because most of the time it is. But I'm saying there is a way to look at it from pure awareness and to see there's a first personal givenness to experience that can be accounted for while we are free from ego. That is not dependent on ego, not dependent on separateness, but that it is actual potential for pure awareness itself. Meaning, how is pure awareness going to be aware? Pure awareness in its own, I agree with Rupert that pure awareness can know itself. And that, we can go on some detail about how that can be. It can be know itself in its purity, but it also can know itself in many other ways. Like it can know itself as love, it can know itself as clarity, it can know itself as truth. While it is still awareness. We'll go into that some other time. But the fact that experience is never anonymous, meaning it's always somebody's experience, right? Otherwise, there is no experience. Because the pure awareness that many teachings, and Rupert and I agree on, is only indivisible, sort of indefinable kind of light or luminosity, a knowingness, the capacity to be aware, to perceive. It happens always through somebody. And this somebody, I don't call it mind, because for me, that is degrading a potential for awareness. What I see is that consciousness or awareness, which is indefinable, it's not determinate in terms of size and shape and color or form, although it can know itself, right? That consciousness, which is beyond all the particulars, right? Beyond the specific experience, it itself expresses itself in a particular context. It manifests everything, but it expresses itself in that manifestation as a particular location that is capable of perception. It gives awareness a window into its own manifestation. That's how I count for first personal givenness. There's no first personal givenness if there isn't some kind of individuation of consciousness itself. And I'm saying it is possible to recognize this individuation and recognize this when I know pure awareness in itself, in its vastness, in its purity, in its emptiness. I know this awareness itself, which has no form, no shape, nothing, can express itself without losing any of those characters as an individual consciousness. And this individual consciousness manifests a body, mind, and heart. But it is individual. That's my experience, my understanding. It's a consciousness, individual. It doesn't collapse. It simply manifests an individual version of itself, not separate, just like an ocean can manifest a wave. And that wave has the perceptual apparatus. That awareness in its own doesn't have, pure awareness doesn't have a way, it has no window into the universe without an organ of perception. So I see the individual consciousness as beyond mind, beyond heart, beyond body, and all of these are manifestation, expression of it, can be collapsed, can be not, depending on how freely we experience them. But the individual consciousness is like I, as the true awareness. I'm aware of myself at the same time that I recognize that there is a localized awareness in this room. And this localized awareness in this room does not collapse me. It gives me a window into this particular room. And it is this particular individual consciousness is unique and important. And it doesn't die through ego death. Ego death is the death or the collapse of the individual consciousness, not the collapse of pure awareness. Pure awareness never collapses. Individual consciousness contracts by identifying with a history, with an identity, with a particle body or particle manifestation. But it can be free from that. And it's basically, it is pure awareness liberating its organ of perception from the veils that prevents it from seeing purely. And when the veils fall off, the individual consciousness is a faithful, true servant of pure awareness. That is what I am. And then I can see everybody else. Everybody is a unique expression of pure awareness. Some know it, some don't know it. So I'm just putting an alternate view. I'm not disagreeing with you. You have your view of how you look at it. You conceptualize it in a certain way, which gives a certain logic. I'm giving a different kind of logic of how I experience things. You see, by introducing the idea of individual consciousness. That consciousness can be pure and be individual, without the individual being a part or a collapse of the originary primordial consciousness and awareness. Because the primordial consciousness and awareness is like, it can't perceive, it's just like a body without eyes, it can't see. The eyes, or I like the other word, not eye, tongue. How will you taste without a tongue? How can your body taste without a tongue? Your body needs a tongue to taste, right? Same thing. Pure awareness needs an organ for it to know what we call the world, to know particulars, which are themselves nothing separate from pure awareness. They are really how pure awareness appears. It's that everything we see is nothing but the appearance, the manifestation, pure, which is what I said right at the beginning. See, but it is perceiving it through a particular consciousness that can actually, if we have the capacity and have the possibility, can be aware, have experience, can be independent of what you call body. Because some of the perspective about experience is that it is because we have a body, our experience is localized. And my view is that localization is not because of the body, because of the individual consciousness. Individual consciousness actually functions through this particular body. When the body drops, the individual consciousness will live. That's why when people, for instance, talk to me, I was just talking with a friend who is a follower of Ramana Maharshi, long-time follower. And I said, what happened to Ramana Maharshi after he died? She said, well, he became pure awareness. He's everywhere. I said, you mean he's aware of everything? She said, yeah, he's aware of everything. I said, think about it. If he's aware of everything, he's aware of all the stars, inside the atoms, he's aware of your body and your mind and your cells and everybody's minds and cells all of the time, all these bits of information all of the time. In science, they call that white noise, means no experience. I told him, I don't believe Ramana Maharshi just became like that. And the other reason I told her that Ramana Maharshi is not like that, although he experiences himself that way, is because I told her, how come I know right now that he's here and he loves you? Because you're such a good devotee. Ramana Maharshi still is, even though for many people said his body died. But he still is. That, for me, expresses something about individual consciousness. Ramana Maharshi is not just the infinite awareness, he's also his own unique individual consciousness. That is Ramana, but now it might not call Ramana, right? But the idea that the individual consciousness doesn't have an age like the body. And so that's one thing I thought was important to say, because Rupert discussed his perspective about mind. I'm giving you my perspective, which is sort of parallel, but I call it as individual consciousness, which can lead us to the question, is there always an experiencer or experience? That will take it further. Maybe we should leave that a little later.
I just want to conclude this part. So
Yeah.
I hear two notions. I hear Rupert is saying awareness is aware of itself.
Yeah.
And Hamid, you're saying the individual consciousness is the organ of perception for pure awareness. Maybe, Rupert, how would you like to respond on that perspective? And my question would be, if awareness is aware of itself, the appearance of individual consciousness, what is it? Is it just like a malfunction in pure awareness? Is just like a mistake? Is a crack in the matrix that we're just...
I liked your description of individual consciousness, Hamid. I've never understood until now what you meant by it, but I understand much more clearly now what you mean. And I liked your metaphor in particular of individual consciousness being like a window that gives pure consciousness the ability to see something. Mm-hmm. That is very close to what I call mind.
Yeah.
In fact, it's almost identical, that mind, when I say a collapse, I don't literally mean that consciousness is all collapses into, I mean more like a precipitation. So pure consciousness stays infinitely expanded, as it always is, but the mind, what you call infinite consciousness, is precipitated within consciousness and gives it, as you say, a window, a means by which it can view something that seems to be other than itself. So
but that happens only when the individual consciousness becomes somewhat separate from the pure awareness. Then we can say it objectifies.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
But not if it doesn't forget. Like at this moment, for instance, there is individual consciousness and there is the formless consciousness at the same time.
But the consciousness
Yeah.
with which individual consciousness
Yeah.
is conscious of its experience
Yeah.
is infinite consciousness. But it is infinite consciousness to which an apparent limit has been added, which enables it to view a finite world. In other words, each of us now, as you rightly say, has a unique perspective. There are 60 different perspectives.
Yeah.
60 different individual, let's say, locations of knowing or perceiving.
Yeah.
But if each of us asks ourselves the question, and that's what I call mind, or you call individual consciousness, but if each of us asks ourselves now, what is the nature of the knowing with which I know my current experience? My current experience, my limited mind, is just seeing a particular image. None of you are seeing what I see. What I see is an expression of this limited mind, and that is true of all of us. But if each of us, instead of turning our knowing towards the object that we know, but we turn that knowing back on itself and ask ourselves, what is the nature of the knowing with which the individual mind knows its experience? The mind is drawn backwards gradually. It takes this journey back towards, the knowing with which the mind knows its experience. It travels backwards towards the source of its knowing, and at some point it realizes that that source of knowing is not individual, it is infinite. It is that infinite consciousness that takes the shape of the finite mind or individual consciousness when it wants to know something other than itself, such as a world.
Yeah.
And in order to know a world, I agree with you completely, it needs to precipitate the finite mind or individual consciousness within itself in order to give it eyes and tongues to see and taste. But in order to know itself, it doesn't need to precipitate or take the shape of the finite mind. It knows itself by itself.
Yes. Through the individual consciousness.
No.
Never. What I mean what I mean. Can pure awareness know itself without it being somebody's
Yes.
knowing it?
In fact, pure consciousness can only know itself when it is divested of all
But it's
individual limitations.
always somebody saying it.
No, somebody saying it, that is no, but that's different. It is Rupert's individual mind that is expressing this realization. But the experience itself is not experienced by a limited mind.
I understand that, Rupert.
Infinite
I agree with you.
In other words, consciousness doesn't need a puny little finite mind in order to know itself. It needs a puny little finite mind in order to express itself, and that's what is happening through Rupert's puny little finite mind at the moment. But the knowing which illuminates Rupert's puny finite mind, and all of our puny finite minds, is itself this magnificent, limitless, indivisible, infinite consciousness.
Yeah.
And that is shining. That is the only substance present in the finite mind. The finite mind, our minds are so finite, all they can see at the moment is this room. I mean, think of everything else in potential that we could see at the moment. We are seeing a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what is possible. The mind is very finite. But what it is that illuminates or knows the finite mind is itself infinite. That's the amazing thing. This very perception that each of us is having now is shining with the light of infinite consciousness.
And it's enthralling to have that experience. Robert, I love what you say. because that's my experience. And I experienced it for such a long time, and I was so enthralled by it until I started understanding individual consciousness and realized that is all true. However, in this experience, the experience itself of realization or awakening, there's no individual consciousness, nothing limited. There's just the purity, the infinity, pure awareness, aware of its luminosity, its emptiness, transparency, and all of that. That is the experience, right? And that's what you talk. Assume you talk about. But it took me a long time to recognize in that experience, the individual consciousness is implicit in a virtual way. Otherwise, that experience will not occur.
Sorry, what experience will not occur?
The awareness recognizing itself. So that's, I'm actually, by saying this, I'm going out on a limb because I'm disagreeing with many traditions. Most non-dual traditions will disagree with what I'm saying. But I'm not saying they're wrong, and the experience itself, or the non-dual experience of pure awareness, is my experience too. But I'm saying, I'm adding something else, which I think is very important for all of us, to value our humanness, that without the individual consciousness, even the pure enlightenment, the total formlessness and infinity is not possible. How is it going to happen? For it to occur, there has to be even though in the pure awareness you could say it takes in the individual consciousness and it dissolves. That's my experience. The individual can completely dissolve, and there is no individual, no one, no location. It's just the pure radiance of awareness or being. And it took me a long time to understand all that meant, that the individual consciousness became subsumed, became invisible. But without it, there won't be the experience of realization. That's why Buddha's enlightenment is Sakyamuni's enlightenment. Ramana Maharshi enlightenment is not just pure awareness enlightenment. It is pure awareness enlightenment, but Ramana Maharshi is important. That individual is important. That pure awareness knew itself through Ramana Maharshi. Buddha knew his enlightenment through the Sakyamuni. And I'm emphasizing the importance of individual consciousness because there is another step that I haven't mentioned, which is when we know awareness, pure awareness in its luminosity and its transparency, first we see it as infinite, vastness, infinite luminosity, and that's the usual, what I call classical enlightenment. The source that is the source of everything, that is everything. And we see it as infinite, but looking into that consciousness of that awareness to see what is it? What are its properties? What are its characteristics? Is it really infinite? When I check into it more, I realize it is infinite, but not exactly so. Because infinite is the polar opposite of finite. And pure awareness is innocent of those distinctions. So one stage it is infinite, another stage of self-recognition am I infinite? The word infinite simply doesn't compute at some point, doesn't apply, because it is conceptual. The infinite is the opposite concept as finite. And I'm bringing in another kind of non-dual, another way of looking at non-dual realization that helps us, gives me, because I want to emphasize the individual consciousness in a certain way, which is when we recognize, when we see that pure awareness has other properties besides luminosity and emptiness and transparency, that it is free of all concepts. Come closer to answering your question. It is free from all concepts. There are two important things that happen here. One thing that can happen, because it is free from concept, it's free concept of time and space. When it is free of concept of time and space, its freedom of concept of time and space, it does not mean it has no time and space. It is free, meaning it has all time and space, but it is not patterned by it. Time and space can be there, can be there, timeless and spaceless. For pure awareness, it's irrelevant. When that happens, pure awareness can recognize that all what we see here is not extended in space. We see it as extended in space, but it's reality. In reality, space disappears, and I see everything is right here. You are here, just I am you there. Everybody is right here. I don't see you there. My eyes sort of see you. It's like a visual kind of illusion that there is somebody there, even though in the state of unity, it can say everybody is a manifestation of the same field. But there is another realization that everybody is the same field, but this field doesn't extend, doesn't have space. For it to be infinite, to be vast, there is the concept of space, because there is a concept of size, there is a concept of distance. Infinity is infinite size. And pure awareness is innocence of that. It doesn't know anything about that. From that perspective, we can see that the individual, conscious, like Rupert, you, Rupert, I see you. You, as the individual human being, the unique human being, not the particulars of the history, but the individual consciousness that pure consciousness manifested, that pure consciousness is the totality of pure consciousness. Meaning, I, as an individual, contain the whole universe. I, as an individual, as the individual consciousness, contain the totality of pure consciousness, because for pure consciousness, the distinction between the particle and the whole disappears. And from that perspective, the other thing that is possible is that, which maybe we could give it another sort of more time later on after we discuss some of these things, is that there is possible to experience, to have the realization that there's only reality. Reality manifesting. Not only there is no perceiver. First, there is no, that's one stage. There is just everything with nobody perceiving it. There's just everything appearing. Nobody is there perceiving it. It is sort of just there. To say perceiving it, experiencing, is using a concept of perception and experience. There is a way of realization. I wouldn't say I'm seeing you, there is just you. It's an afterthought to say there's a perception, whether it's pure awareness perceiving it or an individual mind perceiving. That's an afterthought. But in the immediacy of experience, I'm free of all those concepts. And when I'm free from those concepts, I don't know how to say it. It's just like everything is what it is. And that is all. To say anything more is adding concepts. To say even it is experience is adding a concept. To say it's awareness is adding a concept. And I'm not negating the experience of pure awareness and experience, because that's usually what happened. And the classical enlightenment is a pure awareness, aware of itself and knowing itself. I'm not negating that. But I'm saying there are other subtleties that can happen that brings in a valuing for our uniqueness, our unique individuation that is necessary for reality. In other words, you could say God needs the individual. Otherwise, God has no way of having any experience, even experience of its own being. So that's the perspective, and I'm saying I'm adding something to the usual perspective without negating the usual perspective of awareness, pure awareness knowing itself. But because you brought in that question, I thought maybe that's one way of answering it.
I think I'm beginning to understand, as a result of this conversation, more and more that we have in common in our views.
Yeah.
I'm understanding your language, your framework. I'm beginning to see what you mean, but also to see the differences.
Yeah. That's what's interesting.
That's
because we have a lot in common, but there are a few little differences that might make it interesting to discuss.
I'm seeing that we have more and more in common, but as what we have in common becomes clearer and clearer, those little places that we don't have in common also stick out in sharp relief. And one of them is the last sentence you said, that God needs us to know himself. And this is a point where I would love to somehow try to merge our 2 points of view and to think that we were saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But on this particular issue, I think we're saying something different. In my experience and understanding, God does not need humanity to know its own being. To believe such a thing is to limit God. To say that God needs a human mind in order to know itself. To me, it's like insulting God.
You sound Christian.
It's like
Rupert. That's the Christian view.
It's like saying the sun needs to shine its light on the moon in order to illuminate itself. I mean, the finite mind is, as you rightly say, it's God's instrument through which it knows the world. Yeah. God needs to shine through a finite mind if it wants to know something that seems to be other than itself, such as an object, person, or world. But to know itself, it doesn't need to filter its knowing through the tiny little chink of a human mind. It doesn't need manifestation.
How do we know that?
Because if we go deeply to the experience of being aware...
Who goes deeply?
Being aware... Well, when I say if we go deeply to the experience of being aware, I'm making a concession to the object-knowing mind, whose attention is lost in objects. So as a concession to the object-knowing mind, I'm saying to the mind, if you turn yourself around and direct your attention back towards the source of your knowing, if you, as Rumi said, sink down and down and down in ever-deepening rings of being. If the mind sinks deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into its source, as it sinks into its source, it is progressively divested of all the limitations that thought and feeling have superimposed upon it. And at some stage, it stands revealed as pure consciousness, then we realize, there is no such thing as a finite mind that leaves consciousness. That consciousness never leaves itself. It never goes anywhere. Consciousness itself takes the form of objects with which it seems to limit itself.
Yes.
So you're right to ask the question, who goes there? Right. The answer is, the suggestion that we go to consciousness is a concession to the object-knowing mind. Yeah. There's nobody that goes there because consciousness never really leaves home. Mm-hmm. It always remains knowing its own being.
Yeah.
So when I say, if we turn our attention towards consciousness, it's just a concession to the mind. I'm trying to...
but why call it a concession, Rupert?
Because as you quite rightly imply in your question to me, who is the one that returns to infinite consciousness? You're right, there is no such one. I am making a concession to the one that we believe ourselves to be the finite
that's
consciousness.
Exactly what I'm asking. I'm saying it is not really a concession. That is the process by which pure awareness gets to know itself.
That is only true.
Why call it a concession when it is the natural
because
process?
The concession is that we are believing...
A concession implies there is something else that is not pure awareness.
Exactly, that we're making a concession to the belief that there is something called a finite consciousness. If we believe there is something called a finite consciousness, then as a concession to that belief, we can say to that finite consciousness, explore the consciousness with which you know your experience. And then this apparently finite consciousness begins to explore its own consciousness and at some point realizes, wow, I am not finite. Then we realize there was never a finite consciousness. There was always only infinite consciousness. So that is why I say it's a concession. If we think there is a finite consciousness, then as a concession to that belief, we can say to that finite consciousness, explore the consciousness with which you know your experience and discover that it has always only been infinite.
So you're saying always, whether there is individual consciousness or not, it's always the pure awareness.
Yes.
I agree
there is
with
nothing but God. As it says in the Quran, there is no God but God. In other words, no thing or person has its own being. God, there is only God. There is only infinite consciousness. There are there's no question of, no finite consciousness ever comes into existence or ever goes out of existence as a concession. In other words, the finite consciousness is only real from its own illusory point of view. As a concession to that illusion, we can speak to the finite consciousness and say, okay, I understand you think you are finite. Turn around and explore the knowing with which you know your experience. So we are, in that sense, if we believe there is a finite consciousness, we are making a concession to it.
Yeah, so that's how you look at it, Rupert. I don't look at it that way. Although the view is the same, I do have the same experience, which is there's only pure awareness, there's only God, there's nothing else, right? I agree with you. That's what's common. But I think the pure awareness, the pure consciousness, doesn't make concession to anything. It just manifests itself in different ways. And one of the ways it manifests itself as an awareness that is expressing itself in an individual way, and that brings about a certain kind of experience.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I have no problem with that.
While it is still the pure awareness, in other words, the manifestation or the individual expression of pure awareness is not a concession, and it's not an illusion. It is really pure awareness expressing itself purely in an individual way, in a particular space and time, while it is itself beyond the space and time.
Perfect. The only illusion is that
so that's why we agree.
Yes. The illusion is only that it becomes something finite.
If it becomes, that's an illusion.
Exactly.
However, it can see the individual consciousness and recognize there is an individual consciousness without it disappearing. I mean, I have the experience of being the formless consciousness, at the same time manifesting an individual consciousness that is real and pure. I can express it, I can retract it, without it being an illusion. It is my own being. It's just God has a sun. Now you could say it that way. You could say the sun is an illusion. It's not an illusion. It is really my expression. It is my hand. You know, awareness has this hand. Awareness has this consciousness. So some will call it illusion. I understand that. My experience of it is that if you believe that that is something on its own, independent of awareness, that's an illusion. But from pure awareness, I can see reality and all the manifestation. For me, it's not an illusion. It is just the appearance of awareness. That's how awareness appears to the usual seeing and hearing and all that. And then, of course, when that happens, it can have different characteristics. There could be luminosity in it. And for me, what makes it real is that then there is heart, there is love, there is appreciation, there is empathy, and there is contact. That shows that it is pure, the true awareness that is manifesting reality. Although the reality is the same thing that other people might experience. See?
I feel that we have come a long way since our last conversation to find what we have in common and explore places where perhaps our different use of language clouded the issue. And I think maybe we should have a brief bathroom break and then open it up to the participants.
Good idea.
Before we do that, just maybe the last question I had could help bring some more light in this. So if...
Beware, you know what Hamid and I are like. If you ask us a question, we'll be here for another hour.
We have 10 minutes for this one.
Okay.
So if awareness never ceases to be, or never ceases to know itself, then what gets realized?
Can I ask you a question? You start your question saying, if awareness never ceases to be. So wouldn't that be the first thing to discover? To clear up the if. Mm-hmm. In your experience, does awareness cease to be?
Yeah.
In anybody's experience, does awareness cease to be? Has anybody ever had the experience of the absence of awareness? Apart from Hamid.
But I think it is similar to something. I don't think we'll disagree. If I explain it, you'll see
Would you like
the same thing.
But in your experience, Zaya, have you ever had the experience of the absence of awareness? You started your question. If awareness
I have
never
experience
ceases to be.
in which awareness has no meaning.
That was not the question. The question was, have you ever had the experience of the absence of awareness?
No. I had an experience of absolute annihilation, and the awareness came after and reflected and coded annihilation. But in that very moment, I don't know if there was awareness.
Well, how did you have the experience of inhalation if awareness wasn't present?
That's what I'm saying. It feels like it, yeah.
Okay, so you had annihilation. Uh-huh. So there was nobody there, nothing there, no experience, no awareness?
The thought came after, or there was awareness.
No, the thought came after, sure. The thought came after, but I'm not asking you about the thought, whether but the experience. Is there something in your experience that remains ever present?
Yes.
Is there something in your experience that never started and never stops?
Yes.
What are the implications of that for you? To recognize that and formulate it intellectually is very interesting and everything, but really think about that. There is something in my experience that never appeared, never changes, never goes away, and never disappears. What are the implications of that for you?
I don't think there are implications. It is. That's all there is.
If there is something in your experience, if that which you essentially are in your experience never appeared, never disappears, and is never absent, how do you know that you were born and that you will die?
I don't know.
You don't. You don't know that. It's just a presumption. Why do we presume it? It's because we imagine that this ever-present awareness shares the limits of the body.
Yeah.
We think that awareness is identical to the body, that it suffers the limitations and the destiny of the body, that it appears when the body appears, that it disappears when the body dies. But you have just said, in your own experience, there is something that doesn't appear and disappear, that had no beginning and has no end. The implications of that is that what you essentially are is deathless. Now, imagine living every moment of your life. Imagine if every moment of your life was informed by this understanding. I don't just mean when you're at a non-dual conference talking and writing art. I mean,
it's freedom.
Moment
to me,
by
that's
moment.
freedom.
When you're talking with your child, when you're with your partner, when you're on the phone, when you're buying groceries in the supermarket, when you're walking down the sidewalk. Imagine if your life, your felt, lived experience was informed by just this realization. What implications would it have for your life?
The first thing comes, it's freedom.
Yes. Yes, freedom, imperturbable peace.
And yet these are still labels that come later.
Of course, but we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
We have to give it labels. They're all imperfect labels. Not a single word that any of us have said this morning is absolutely true. You know, we make this concession to language. Of course they're labels, imperfect labels.
So what I'm hearing is, in response to the question, what gets realized is that which is always here.
Nothing new is realized. It's imagine you're an actor. Imagine you're an actress, and you have playing the role of Desdemona, and because you're a very good actor, Zaya completely forgets herself and becomes Desdemona. She's just Desdemona through and through. But she so completely identifies herself with the role of Desdemona or Cleopatra that when the play ends, she forgets to take her costume off. She stays Desdemona, and she lives her life as if she was Desdemona. And a friend comes to her one day and says, "No, you're not, you're Zaya." So Desdemona sits down and begins to think about her experience, and she goes deeply into her experience, and eventually she has this recognition: I'm not Desdemona, I'm Zaya. So what has been realized? Nothing new has been added to you. Desdemona has been removed from you. But in fact, even that is not true, because Desdemona was only Zaya dressed up.
Yeah. And I think I just want to make the bridge here, because I suddenly hear you both in this moment, and I hear what Hamid was trying to say as well, that Desdemona or the character is pure awareness and it's never been anything different than that.
Yes.
The essence of it is the same.
Yes.
And you agree on that. And the character is, even though it appears separate, is the same.
Yes.
And is not an illusion. Its essence is...
As Huang Po said, people ignore the reality of the illusory world.
Right.
So the character is an illusion as a real character.
Yes.
When we dream of a world, the world we dream of is an illusion. But even an illusion has a reality. If we explore the reality of the illusory world that we dream about, we find only the reality of consciousness.
I like what you're saying, Rupert. That's part of my understanding. I can formulate the thing in a slightly different way, which is using the language of illusion and all of that. For me, it is possible to get some kind of illumination, understanding, where we can see that whatever the experience is, it is always reality, nobody else. Even when there is an experience of a separate self relating to a dismembered world, it is reality itself, knowing itself that way. Reality knowing itself in a dualistic way. Who else can be doing it? Because we have already agreed there is only reality or awareness. So reality can appear in a dualistic way, or reality can appear in a non-dualistic way. Reality appears in a way that we can say illusory, or reality can appear in a way that we see it is reality in itself. But all the time it is the same reality. What else can it be? Sure. If we believe that the dual world is the mechanism of some kind of person, we're already dualistic. So, from my perspective, it doesn't matter what the experience is. It is always reality. Whether it's calling it an illusion or not an illusion, it's human, our mind says these things. Reality sometimes appears itself in a way that human beings think it's difficult. Sometimes reality manifests itself in a way that humans say, this is divine. Reality manifests itself in some way that humans say, this is pure awareness. Reality is not concerned. Reality just keeps showing itself one way after another. It has many ways, and it's free to manifest itself as deluded or non-deluded, dual, non-dual, or otherwise. It's always the same reality. The moment we know this is the same reality, all the stories about, illusion, delusion, individual self, all of that goes by the wayside. We can't say, we can't give the individual, the separate self, a reality. It is always the same reality manifesting itself. So reality can manifest itself in a way that people call, it's limited, it's not enlightened. Well, who's doing that? Or reality can manifest as pure luminosity and pure emptiness. Well, who's doing that? It's always the same one. So this is a view that appears at some time that tends to remove the comparison between the various ways of experiencing things and making one is subtler or higher or more real than others. I'm not completely dismissing the view of saying this is more real than other. I see that as true. Reality also manifests itself that way, of us thinking that way. But reality can manifest itself without that view. So reality can manifest itself as a human being who says, I have enlightenment, and I was before not enlightened, now I'm enlightened. Or reality can manifest itself and says, who's saying all of these things? All these are human imagination. Reality is just reality. Whatever way it manifests itself is reality. It's always reality, the same reality. So it's another way of saying it, not using the language of illusion, whatever, looking at another language. I'm not disagreeing with the language of illusion. I'm saying the language of illusion is one way reality manifests itself. That thing appears as illusory. But another way reality manifests itself, it's not illusory, it's just reality. You know, if I am an individual, suffering person, and I'm mad at somebody and all that, you know, people say, well, this person is not enlightened. Well, are you saying there is this person that's separate from reality? There's not somebody other than God? If you believe there is only God, you have to believe that all conditions are God's manifestation. What else can it be? So that's just another view that I think doesn't negate the view of seeing things as enlightenment and illusion and all of that, but gives a different way of looking at it.
Great. So let's just open the floor for questions. There is a winner.
Hi. Hello. My question is about animals and experience. So if we're saying that, we were talking earlier about experience not having an experiencer, and I don't really know a lot about this, but the way that I see it is even an amoeba is having a perception of something. But is there an experiencer or no experiencer?
I don't know if I can answer it. You go ahead. Yeah.
Well, whatever it is that is experiencing the amoeba's experience is obviously aware. So in Hamid's language, if I've understood you correctly, we could say that the amoeba is like a very, very small window through which God knows an amoeba's world. In my language, the amoeba's mind is an extremely limited mind, which infinite consciousness appears to localize itself in an amoeba's body, and through that amoeba's body it sees the very limited amoeba's world. But the knowing with which the amoeba knows its experience is not limited by the amoeba's body. Just like the knowing with which you now know your current experience is not limited by your body. In other words, there is only one awareness, and it belongs to God.
So God as amoeba.
Yes, God, exactly. Yeah.
I usually sometimes don't think of amoebas. I like to think of lizards. Little lizard like geckos. I always wonder, when a lizard is up there on the rock, is its experience dual or non-dual? Do you ever think of that? It doesn't have a mind, the kind of mind we have, the thinking, conceptualizing. What is its perception? Dual or non-dual? Do we know? Or something else? I don't have an answer for it. This is an interesting question.
This is for Rupert. You said something early on in the discussion, and I must say that I felt very sorry for all the scientists that are here at the Science and Non-Duality Conference, because scientists, they believe that they do know something, and you said that to know anything, you have to in fact forget something of what you are in truth. You have to forget your true nature. And I just wanted to ask you whether I misunderstood that.
It would be more accurate to say that to believe that anything that is finite is absolutely real on its own terms, as a finite object, requires the apparent overlooking of reality.
Would you therefore say that people who are here and who are scientifically oriented have to be ignorant to be scientists?
I consider myself to be extremely scientifically orientated. I feel that what I'm engaged in is the ultimate science. Because until we know the nature of the knowing with which our experience is known, we cannot know anything for certain about the known, about the world. So the ultimate science has to be the science of consciousness. Until we know the nature of consciousness, we cannot know what anything is. So I feel that I am totally scientific in my approach, and most scientists, not perhaps the scientists that attend this conference, but most scientists are not at all scientific in their approach. They first imagine the existence of an outside world made of dead inert stuff called matter, and then they explore the cause and the nature of that world. What they don't realize is that that world is a presumption. The world made of dead inert stuff called matter is a presumption, and it is founded on the presumption that I am a temporary finite self. As long as we believe and feel that we are a temporary finite self, everything we know and experience will be a reflection of that belief. Therefore, in order to know what anything truly is, we first have to know the nature of consciousness. That's the ultimate science, the science of consciousness.
I'm glad to hear that there's hope for the scientists here. Yes, it was easily misunderstood before, and I share the view with you that there's no obstacle in knowing objects, given that you see through the fact that it is not the ultimate truth, it is a relative truth. So,
Yes.
yeah, that was clarified. That clarified my question. Thank you. I do have a question also for Hamid, and that's the question how you define reality. Because before you said that reality can express itself as something that is illusory and also as something that is real. Right. And my own definition of reality would have been that it is something that doesn't come and go. But
good question.
According to my experience, all the expressions that you experience, the expressions of reality, they do come and go, and therefore take on the status of being transitory or illusory.
Yeah. I think when I use the word reality, I was using it in a loose way, because sometimes I use the word reality to mean what is real. So, 20 years or so, when I used reality, I meant the enlightened condition. You're seeing what is real, how to see everything from the real, fundamental, primordial perspective, that everything is a manifestation of true nature of awareness. When I was using reality a few minutes ago, I am sometimes going a little further than that and saying, realizing everything is the expression of awareness, which is reality. That is the case actually even when somebody is not aware that everything is the expression of awareness. It is still the same reality. The fact that they don't know it doesn't make it not so. So all experience is reality. Reality is whatever we happen to be experiencing. That was my word, my usage of the word, which is different from what I've done for many years. It's different from what many teaching mean, which is reality is the true nature of things. I'm not negating that, but I'm saying I can also use the word reality to mean whichever thing you experience is reality. Because what else can it be? The moment you have the non-dual realization, you have to give up dualistic thinking. Dualistic thinking includes things like when somebody is not enlightened, they're experiencing non-dualistically. That's dualistic thinking. I mean, there's somebody there on their own, creating their own world, when it is really reality creating it. So it's an extension of the word reality from what's spiritually referred to as the true reality to recognizing that at some point, what else can there be at any time? Most teaching, actually, advanced non-dual teaching, they leave this insight all the way till the end, and they don't tell their students at the beginning. Because they're afraid if they tell them that, they won't practice. If everything is reality, then why do all of this? For me, you have to do all of this. You have to wake up, because otherwise it's just a belief. It's not a certainty of knowing.
As a scientist, I would just like to start the meeting off by dispelling the notion that scientists take themselves any more seriously than anybody else in this room who may not consider themselves a scientist. And science, the practice of science, the art of science is thoughts, just like everybody else's thoughts. So I used to think these thoughts are kind of playing in the thought playground, but as a tribute to Mauricio and Zaya, I now believe these thoughts are simply playing in the thought sandbox. So I just want to say that I believe also that Rupert is in the upper echelon of scientists, but I'd like to speak for the rest of science and scientists to say that we don't take ourselves so seriously, any more than anyone else takes themselves seriously. Some take themselves seriously. There's something probably misguided in a manner of speaking about that. Others just see these as thoughts. Let's have fun. This is where we are right now. We're thinking. So let's just have fun. And I think our thoughts can be very liberating, as Zaya described, freedom through the dissolution of thought, perhaps. And so let's embrace scientists as just like the rest of us, trying to have a good time in the sandbox.
You know, I like that. I'm a scientist. I used to be a scientist. I was a physicist at some point, so I know what science is like. And I will say, I hope you're right, that all scientists are like you, with playing with their thoughts. Because many scientists, they are, from our perspective, playing with their thoughts, but from their perspective, they believe no, they really got it, and their theory is right. And remember the story like Newton and Leibniz, that their fight, who invented calculus. They really even don't believe, no, I did it. I am the scientist here.
But that's just like lawyers, business people. Some people think they're right, and that there is a right and a wrong, and many others do not. So I don't think science is different.
No, I don't think science.
Anybody in any walk of
I
life.
agree. But in our culture, science has taken a place. In some sense, in the 20th century, you could say science sort of taken the place of religion for many people. It became sort of the way of knowing realities. If it's scientific, it's reliable. If not scientific, it's not reliable. It has become that way. Now that is being questioned, both philosophically and by scientists themselves. But for a long time, if it's proven by science, it means true. Now things are shifting, I agree with you. Maybe the religion itself is being questioned.
Yeah, let me ask about the thing we are speaking of. This is about awareness. How would you define awareness? What should we mean on it? Because usually we can mean awareness is a special state of mind. And mind belongs to living beings. So its life, it seems something much more fundamental. Can it be present awareness in the absence of life? Or what is the relation of awareness to life? But first of all, how can we understand the awareness that you have in mind? What are you speaking about? So, how can we, both of you would be good to learn more about the idea or concept or the experience before concept. What is we are speaking about? What is this awareness?
I would define awareness very simply as whatever it is that is aware of your experience.
Pardon?
Whatever it is that is aware of your experience.
Awareness is whatever.
Whatever it is that
Awareness
is aware.
is what is aware. It seems to be. Yeah,
Whatever it is that knows, experiences, or is aware of your experience.
Mm-hmm. So it seems to be hard to escape awareness from the definition.
It is indeed very hard to escape awareness.
How to understand them? Because it's something like a circus vicious. So it's we should grasp some.
What is aware of your experience?
Pardon?
What is aware of your experience?
Of my experience. This is completely different because.
What is aware of your experience?
So who am I?
No, that wasn't the question. The question was, what is aware of your experience?
What is aware of my experience? Of course, as I said, my. So this is me.
No, don't mess with words.
Yeah.
You understand the question. You are having an experience now.
Yeah.
You are seeing this room, you are hearing these words, you are experiencing the sensation of your hands on the mic, and you are experiencing thoughts. What is experiencing that?
I think my mind, or through certain capability.
Tell us about the mind that is experiencing that.
So I can tell, but first of all, I would like to know about your opinion.
I'm leading you through a series of questions to my experience of awareness. So you said your mind is aware of your experience. Tell us about that mind.
That mind is something which is, as far as I conceive it, it is something...
No, not how you conceive it,
no.
How you experience it.
How you before conceive it. Before conceiving it.
Yeah.
Yes. What is your experience? You said it is my mind that experiences thoughts, sensations, and perceptions. Tell us about that mind from your experience.
So I think, or I do not have to say what I think. Or where are we now? It is we are losing the ground. Because I'm speaking something, and you should answer, I think. But you are asking me.
You told us that it was your mind that experienced thoughts, sensations, and perceptions.
Yeah.
So I asked you to tell us about that mind.
Mind is a part and whole of the universe. It is something which
No,
is...
you told us that the mind was that which experiences the universe.
Yeah.
What is the nature of that mind?
It is a living entity.
No, you told us that mind was that which is aware of entities.
Yeah.
Tell us the nature of that mind.
Its nature is a living nature. This is what I think.
Its nature is
a living. It has a living nature. It is not
okay,
an inanimate thing.
It's
it
living.
is not an abstract thing, but a living thing.
Absolutely, it's living. What else do you know about it?
Pardon?
What else do you know about it?
About mind?
Yes.
A lot. A lot. It is hard to tell what you want to hear, or what I should tell. Mind is a capability of my being by which I experience and think, and cognition belongs to it. So, and are we closer now to what
Yes.
is awareness?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So, but not for me. I would like to know.
You know, I'd like to say something here.
Sure.
I think
Please
you're
do.
practicing the direct path in your questioning. That we didn't get to what the
Yes.
different approaches.
Yeah,
The direct path is trying to, recognize awareness right in the moment because it's always what is there. And my approach is not like that. So I do that sometimes for people who are close to it. But usually, if a person says, well, there's an entity, is aware, what is the entity? Tell me about this entity. What does it feel like? What does it experience? As you understand the entity, it comes out more. It reveals itself. Where does it come from? I don't just say who's aware of it. I say, what is the entity? Where does it come from? And as it comes out, it reveals itself, it reveals its histories, it reveals all kinds of things, and then begins to evaporate, leaving subtler and subtler thing. Until at some point, I will say, now, who's aware of that? Then awareness is close by. And that's how the method works. So I deal with experience differently by inquiring into what is the content of experience. That's what you said earlier. Whatever happened in the experience is, try to understand, what is it? First of all, you need to become aware of it. What am I aware of? Not what is the awareness aware of it, we'll get to that. But what is the content you're aware of? What is it that awareness is throwing out? The body, the sensation, the emotion. I'm saying all of it is an expression of awareness anyway. Explore it. If you really get into it, where are you going to get at some point? Not the direct path says, no, don't tell me the content, tell me who's aware of it. Which I think is a beautiful method and it works great for some people. It worked for Rupert, right? And many people like him. But most people actually can't do that. Most people have to go through the content of their experience because the content is sometimes so dense and the identification with it is so strong that need to be loosened in its own term, in its own level. Mm-hmm. That is the diamond approach, is to take the content and deal with it in its own level, find out what's it about, are you feeling mad about whom, why you're mad, and feel the anger, and feel the energy, and then as you feel the energy and the anger, you realize it's an energy. And that energy then, if you explore it, it becomes presence. Because energy of anger, it becomes a certain kind of energy. What is it? It's not just anger, it is some kind of power and strength. What is this power and strength? It seems like I'm just powerful presence. What is powerful presence? It's a presence That is aware of itself. It knows itself. That's the question you are asking. It knows itself, not yet as awareness, but as power, as strength. And you realize the minute there is strength, there is clarity, there is peace, but what is common to all of them? And that's when we recognize pure awareness. That is what's common to all of them. All of those are pure, I call them pure expression of awareness. They are awareness manifesting its purity and a particular quality. So I'm just trying to answer a question you haven't asked yet,
yes,
which is what is the difference between our paths.
So Hamid, what would you ask the participant if you're in this particular situation?
I mean, I can answer
Where would you take the
what is awareness, but Rupert was trying to get you there. His question, Rupert, the way I see it, he was trying to have you experience it, not just give you a theoretical answer. And if I give you an answer, it will be theoretical for you, just as Rupert's question will be.
It was very useful for me because I realized that Rupert thinks that I cannot grasp it by content only if I personally experience it.
Yeah.
This means for me, awareness is something which cannot be conceptualized, only experienced. And what you have told me, this is also very interesting for me because you told that awareness is something which is common in everything.
Yeah.
So it is something like matter for a materialist. Matter is the one which is everything.
Yeah.
So this is something I get closer a bit. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's common to all experience. I think Rupert and I will agree with that.
Yeah.
Common to all experience. I want to say one
Yes.
thing about awareness and how it's common to all experience, which is what is the nature of people get into what is the nature of awareness? What is awareness? That's what the gentleman asking, which you can't really have to know. But one thing of awareness, I know about awareness, my answer to your question, sometimes awareness can look at itself purely. Not look at the objects that is produced, but look at itself purely. When awareness is purely looking at itself without the presence of any manifestation, no thoughts, no feelings, right? No object, no sight, just the awareness looking at itself. When awareness is purely looking at itself, it's looking at pure nothingness, pure nothing. When awareness is aware of its purity with no other thing, which is very rare, most people don't have that. When that happens, there is no content to experience, because awareness has no content. And as a result, there will be no memory if anything happened. And that, when something begins to arise, other content, body, you'll say, awareness ceased. People call it a cessation of awareness or annihilation. It feels like awareness annihilated because there was nothing to be aware of. There's nothing to be aware of, there's no experience. But for me, we discussed it last year, it is really an experience, but it's not an experience of something you're conscious of, because, or you could say, when awareness is completely aware of itself, nothing else. This is what Maher Baba called God in the condition of sleep. When God wakes up, the world appears.
And Rupert, would this be the objectiveness?
I would say when God goes to sleep, the world appears. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, for what is waking for, this is a very loose translation, what is waking for ignorance is nighttime for awareness, and what is waking for awareness is nighttime for ignorance. It's what Wordsworth meant when he said our birth. He didn't mean our physical birth, he meant the waking state. The appearance of the waking state is but a sleep and a forgetting. It's what Rumi meant when he said knowledge of the world is a kind of ignorance.
Nisargadatta said that which doesn't change cannot be known.
Yes, yes. But when I say, when he says knowledge of the world as stuff made out of inert matter, he didn't say experience was ignorance. Knowledge of an outside world made of dead inert stuff called matter is ignorance. Rumi, Wordsworth, the Bhagavad Gita, they all say the same thing. Our birth is but the waking state is but a sleep and a forgetting, an overlooking of the reality of our experience.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful, enlightening conversation. And I just wanted to let you know that both Rupert and Almaas, they have new books. Almaas' new book is called Runaway Realization and is available now in the bookstore. And Rupert's book and 6 CDs of 30 meditations will be available on his website within a month.
In about a month's
In
time.
about a month's time.
What's it called?
It's called The Light of Pure Knowing. So the 2 books. And what a perfect timing to have the conversation. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamid.
Yeah, thank you,
Zion.
Robert. Thank you, Zion.